There are mornings you wake up and you sort of, you brace yourself for the usual hum of political life.
The background noise.
Exactly, the background noise. You expect to be dissecting, I don't know, a new tax proposal or maybe some friction at a G7 summit. Something about an infrastructure bill that's stuck.
Right. Standard political maneuvering, the stuff that fills the news cycle but doesn't necessarily, shake the foundations.
It's friction, but it's
Yeah.
it's the kind of friction the system is designed to handle.
Mm.
But then you get a morning like this one, you scroll through the feed and you realize the temperature hasn't just gone up a bit.
No, the thermometer itself has just completely shattered.
It really has. We are not looking at policy disputes today. This isn't even partisan bickering in the traditional sense.
Not even close. I mean, the entire vocabulary has shifted. We've left the political dictionary behind, and we've landed squarely inside the criminal code.
And not just any part of the criminal code.
Oh, no. We're talking about the highest crimes you can imagine, the kind of stuff a country defines itself against.
Exactly. We're looking at a source today, a report on what it calls an early morning tirade from former President Donald Trump. And look, he's not just vaguely complaining about the past. He is leveling an incredibly specific, incredibly heavy accusation.
Heaviest you can make.
Right. He is accusing his predecessor, Barack Obama, of, and this is a direct quote from the source, a treasonous coup plot. And it doesn't even stop there.
No, that's the crucial part. The accusation is the headline, but the call to action is the real story here. He is explicitly demanding an arrest.
He wants handcuffs.
Yeah.
On a former president of the United States.
That's the threshold we've crossed. I mean, think about it. We've had a decade of unbelievably heated rhetoric. We're looking at a hashtag in this source, hashtag Trump 2026. So we know we're in a political season.
Yeah.
But calling for the arrest of a two-term predecessor,
It's just a different reality.
it completely changes the texture of the conversation. We're not dealing with metaphors anymore. When you start throwing around words like treason and arrest, you are invoking the full power of the state. You are talking about taking away someone's freedom.
Okay, so that sets up our mission for this deep dive. We have this source material, these excerpts from the report, Trump accuses Obama of treasonous coup plot. We see the hashtags, hashtag Breaking Point 360, hashtag Obama 2016. We are not here to relitigate the last 10 years.
No, that's not our job. We're not playing judge and jury on the facts of the matter, on who did what to whom.
Right. Our job is to be analysts, to analyze the escalation itself. We need to get into the language. Why these words? Why coup? Why overthrow? Why treason?
And we need to understand why this specific moment, according to the source, is being framed as a breaking point. This is all about the rhetoric of escalation. How do you get from, I disagree with your policy, to, you are a traitor who should be in jail? And, what happens to a political system when that becomes a normal thing to say?
Because it feels like a monumental shift. So let's lay out a roadmap for this. First, we're going to take a really granular look, almost microscopic, at the accusation itself, the what and the how. Trump uses these very specific phrases about intelligence and political pressure that we need to unpack.
The mechanics of the alleged crime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then we need to talk about the stakes, the demand for an arrest. After that, we'll get into the reaction, because the source describes a nation just fiercely split down the middle on this.
Two completely different interpretations of the same event.
And finally, we have to talk about that hashtag Trump 2026, and this strange political time loop we seem to be trapped in, where 2016 is still happening right now.
That hashtag is the key. It's the psychological architecture for this entire moment. But you're right. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start with the words.
Okay, let's do it. So, this label, the treasonous coup. Let's start with treason. I feel like that word gets thrown around so much online now, it's almost lost its meaning. You see it in comment sections everywhere. They canceled my favorite show, treason.
Right, it's become a synonym for, I'm really upset about this. But in this context, coming from a former president aimed at another former president, it has a different gravity. It's not hyperbole anymore, it's an accusation.
It's heavier.
It's so much heavier because, well, it is the ultimate political crime. It's the one crime that's actually defined in the U.S. Constitution. The framers were terrified of how the charge of treason had been abused by kings in Europe to crush any kind of dissent.
So they want to make it really, really specific.
Incredibly specific. Article 3, Section 3, it says, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. That's it.
Levying war. I mean, that is a very, very high bar to clear.
It's an almost impossibly high bar, and that's by design. So think about the spectrum of political attacks. When one politician accuses another of, say, bad policy, they're saying, you're wrong.
Your ideas won't work.
Right. If they accuse them of corruption, they're saying you're greedy or you're dishonest. But when they accuse them of treason, they're saying something totally different. They're saying you are the enemy.
Wow.
It's a complete delegitimization of your opponent. It's not just that they're wrong, it's that they don't even have the right to be in the conversation. It recasts them from a fellow citizen with a different opinion into an existential threat to the nation's survival.
So it changes the entire set of rules. You debate an opponent, but you have to destroy a traitor.
Precisely. That's the rhetorical function of the word. It reframes the entire situation. And if you can convince your supporters that your opponent is, in fact, a traitor, then any action you take next is justified.
The call for an arrest doesn't seem extreme anymore.
It becomes a moral necessity, a patriotic duty. It's not vengeance. It's national defense. And that is why that word is so powerful and so dangerous in a political context.
Okay, so that's treason. Now let's pair it with the other word, coup. The source quotes Trump claiming this was an attempt to overthrow the government. Now, when I hear the word coup, my mind immediately goes to, old black and white newsreels.
Tanks in the streets.
Yeah, exactly. Tanks rolling down the Capitol's main boulevard, some general getting on the radio to announce he's seized the broadcast stations, the Constitution is suspended. That's a coup.
That is the classic traditional definition for sure. The academic definition is about a seizure of the state apparatus, usually by a faction of the state itself, like the military. But you have to look very closely at the language in our source material. What is the specific method of this coup that Trump is describing?
Right. He's not talking about tanks or generals.
Not at all.
The source says he's accusing them of using intelligence and political pressure.
And that, right there, is a fascinating and, frankly, a critical redefinition of the term. What we're seeing is an attempt to shift the very concept of what a coup is. He's framing bureaucratic actions, the gathering of intelligence, the opening of investigations, applying political pressure behind the scenes, as being morally and legally equivalent to a military overthrow.
It's a coup with spreadsheets instead of soldiers.
Exactly. And it suggests that the real danger isn't a general in a tank who you can see coming. The real danger is a faceless bureaucrat with a file folder.
Which, you have to admit, is a much scarier narrative for a lot of people, isn't it? Because you can see tanks. If there are tanks on Pennsylvania Avenue, everyone agrees, okay, a coup is happening. But intelligence and political pressure, that's invisible.
It's invisible. It happens behind closed doors, in classified briefings, in quiet phone calls. It evokes this idea of the deep state, the enemy within.
The permanent government.
The permanent government. If intelligence, which is, supposed to be the state's tool for protecting us from foreign enemies, is instead being weaponized as a tool for a domestic coup, then the very institutions of government are being painted as the enemy.
It's an incredibly powerful narrative. It suggests the overthrow wasn't about physically seizing a building, but about seizing the legal process, or the narrative, to paralyze and ultimately destroy a presidency from the inside.
And look at that word he uses, overthrow. The source puts it in all caps, which suggests emphasis. He's not saying undermine the government or hinder it or influence it.
No, it's overthrow. It's so violent. It's final.
Overthrow implies a complete toppling. It's not about winning a political fight. It's about ending the fight by removing the opponent entirely. It suggests the intended result of using this intelligence and pressure was the total removal of a legitimately elected authority. So it raises the stakes to the absolute maximum.
And if you genuinely believe that an overthrow was attempted, then you're basically arguing that the entire political reality you've been living in is illegitimate.
You have to. It's the only logical conclusion.
Which brings us to this groundwork theory. The source pulls out this specific phrase, lay the groundwork for a coup.
This is such a critical phrase because it speaks to intent, to premeditation. Laying the groundwork implies this wasn't just a spontaneous reaction to some event. It wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment by the Obama administration.
It's a plan.
It's a long-term, calculated strategy. The accusation here is that this was a conspiracy, a plot that was set in motion deliberately. It's not about incompetence. It's about malice.
And the source specifically ties this all the way back to 2016. It talks about a 2016 coup attempt.
Right. So just think about that timeline for a second. We're sitting here, and the source is pointing us to the hashtag Trump 2026. But the core grievance, the original sin, is rooted a full decade in the past.
10 years.
The accusation is that way back in 2016, a seed was planted. The groundwork was laid. This reframes everything that's happened in the intervening decade. Every investigation, every political battle, every news cycle, it all gets viewed through this one single lens of an ongoing treasonous plot.
It's an incredible narrative arc. If you believe this, if you believe the groundwork was laid in 2016, then you believe that for 10 straight years, the entire political machine has been operating under false pretenses.
Yeah.
That you've been lied to constantly.
That's the power of it. And you can see how it would fuel such intense anger. If you believe a crime has been in progress for 10 years, your demand for justice isn't going to fade away. It's going to fester. It's going to concentrate and become more urgent over time.
And that urgency leads us directly to the next part, the demand for action. Because this isn't Trump just giving a history lesson. He is calling for something very, very specific. The source says he has called for the arrest of Barack Obama.
And this is where we cross the Rubicon. This is the move from rhetoric, however heated, to a call for concrete action. It is one thing to say, history will judge you harshly.
It is a completely different thing to say, the police should come and arrest you right now.
It's a world of difference.
And we have to consider the delivery method. The source is very clear in calling it an early morning tirade.
The context here is just so important. Early morning suggests urgency, maybe sleeplessness. It suggests this isn't a carefully crafted statement that went through 5 layers of PR and legal review.
Oh, absolutely not. If a team of lawyers wrote this, they'd be calling for a special counsel or a congressional inquiry.
Of course, they'd use the language of process. They wouldn't just scream for an arrest. This feels raw. It feels personal, unfiltered.
And the word tirade itself, which the source uses to describe it, implies a certain volume and intensity. This wasn't a polite request. It was a furious demand.
Exactly. And then you look at the target, Barack Obama, a 2-term president.
It just breaks every unwritten rule in the book, doesn't it?
Every single one. There's this concept in American politics, the President's Club. It's this informal understanding that former presidents, regardless of party, generally treat each other with a certain level of public deference. They may disagree privately, but they avoid this kind of thing.
You see them together at state funerals or library openings. They stand side by side, representing the continuity of the office.
Right. It's a way of protecting the institution of the presidency itself. To call for the arrest of a predecessor, especially one who served 2 full, popular terms, it's like taking a sledgehammer to that entire tradition. It signals that the club is dissolved. The norms are gone.
But the source also mentions something else that's really important. It's not just Obama. It says Obama and his allies.
Yes. That's a detail that could easily get lost in the shock of the headline, but it's hugely significant. And his allies, well, that broadens the scope from one person to potentially hundreds or even thousands. That's the terrifyingly open question, isn't it? Is it his cabinet members, his national security team, the intelligence officials who were involved in those investigations we talked about? By including Kaur and his allies, the call for arrest becomes a call for a potential purge. It's not just about prosecuting one person. It's about dismantling an entire network.
It goes right back to that idea of a plot or a conspiracy. A plot needs conspirators. If you're going after the alleged ringleader, you are implicitly calling for the arrest of everyone in the network.
That's it. And that connects directly back to the intelligence and political pressure point.
Right.
The allies are presumably the people who were wielding those bureaucratic tools. So now the picture is complete. You have a former president demanding the incarceration of his predecessor and the civil servants who work for him. The level of escalation here is just, it's difficult to overstate.
Which perfectly explains the next part of our source material, the reaction. The source says this explosive charge is reigniting a fierce partisan debate, and it flags that hashtag breaking point 360.
Breaking point. I mean, what an evocative phrase. A breaking point is where a material snaps under stress. It implies that the tension has just been building and building and building, all this pressure and heat. And this accusation is the final straw, the thing that finally causes the break.
It feels like the source is describing a moment where the rubber band of civil discourse just can't stretch any further. And you have these two just completely separate realities forming in response to the exact same statement.
Polar opposite realities.
On one hand, the source says that supporters are calling this a legitimate warning.
Let's really try to get inside that perspective for a moment, because it's important to understand the internal logic. Legitimate warning. Okay. If you accept the core premise If you believe that a coup was attempted, that groundwork was laid using intelligence to overthrow the government.
Then calling for an arrest isn't a crazy or extreme thing to do.
No, it's the only sane and rational thing to do. It's a warning that the republic itself is fragile and that it needs to be defended from its internal enemies. From that point of view, staying silent would be the real betrayal.
If you see a house on fire, you call the fire department. If you see treason, you demand an arrest. To the supporters described in the source, this isn't about political vengeance.
Not at all. It's about accountability. It's about justice. They would see that early morning tirade not as something unhinged, but as a patriot's alarm bell, a desperate siren trying to wake everyone up to the danger.
And they would argue that if the law is supposed to apply to everyone, then it has to apply to former presidents, too. No one is above the law.
That's the argument. But then you have the other side. And the source says the critics are slamming this as dangerous escalation.
And dangerous seems to be the key word there.
It is. So why is it dangerous from their perspective? Because in a functioning democracy, the safety valve for political disagreement is supposed to be the election. We settle our disputes at the ballot box, not in a jail cell. The critics argue that the moment you start arresting your political opponents, you've crossed a line that you can never, ever uncross.
You become a different kind of country at that point.
You do. It creates a vicious cycle. If Party A arrests the leader of Party B, what do you think is the very first thing Party B is going to do when they get back in power?
They're going to arrest the leader of Party A.
Of course. And that's the spiral. That is the definition of a dangerous escalation. So the critics see this accusation not as a quest for justice, but as the weaponization of the justice system for political ends. They see the word treason being used to criminalize dissent.
If just opposing the president becomes treason, then democracy can't function.
It can't. It creates a chilling effect. It makes people afraid to speak out. It creates a climate of fear where a political loss doesn't just mean you're out of power. It could mean you lose your liberty.
So the source material is essentially presenting us with these two parallel universes existing at the same time. In one universe, the call for arrest is the only way to save the country from a hidden coup.
And in the other universe, that very same call for arrest is the coup. Or at the very least, it's the beginning of the end of democratic norms. It's the authoritarian move.
And the source is just laying them out, side by side. It shows us the fierce partisan debate. It's not picking a side. It's just showing us how these two narratives are on a collision course.
And that collision is the breaking point. A political system can handle disagreements over policy, but it relies on everyone sharing a basic common reality. When we can't even agree on what words like treason or coup mean anymore, the very foundation starts to crack.
And that brings us to the context of all this, the timing. We've mentioned it, but we really need to dig into these hashtags. Hashtag Trump 2026, hashtag Obama 2016.
This is the Back to the Future part of our deep dive.
It really is. The source is explicitly linking an event from 2016 directly to the political landscape of 2026. That is a 10-year span.
Just stop and think about that for a second. 10 years. In the world of technology, 10 years is an eternity. 10 years ago, the AI we have today was science fiction. In culture, 10 years can be a whole generation. But in this specific political conflict, it's like time has completely frozen.
We're refighting the exact same battle from 2016, just in the year 2026.
So the obvious question is, why now? Why is a supposed coup plot from 2016 the central issue in 2026?
That's the question that hashtag just forces you to ask. Hashtag Trump 2026 feel like it should be about the future? It sounds forward-looking. A campaign, a movement, a vision for what's next.
But the content of the message is entirely backward-looking. It's rooted in a grievance from a decade ago. It suggests that in order to move forward into the future of 2026, the scores from the past of 2016 have to be settled first.
It's like the source is telling us you can't build a new house on a foundation you believe is cracked. You have to go back and fix the foundation first.
That's a perfect way to put it. The circular nature of this conflict is what's so striking. The early morning tirade isn't about a new healthcare policy for 2026 or a new foreign policy doctrine. It's about an old wound from 2016 that has clearly not healed. The source explicitly connects hashtag Obama 2016 and hashtag Trump 2026 as if they are the two magnetic poles of this entire era of American history.
Beginning of the, well, not the end, but the continuation.
Exactly. It's a compression of time. A whole decade of political warfare is being squeezed into this one explosive statement.
It's almost like a movie sequel that's being pitched as a way to fix the controversial ending of the first film. We know you didn't like how 2016 played out, so 2026 is going to be the rewrite where the good guys finally win.
That's a great analogy. And it speaks to a very powerful human desire for closure. The narrative of the treasonous plot is compelling. It has a clear villain, it has a high-stakes crime, and it offers a clear resolution, the arrest. That's a much more powerful and emotionally satisfying story for a political base than the slow, messy, compromise-filled reality of actual governance.
And those other hashtags that the source mentions, hashtag US politics, hashtag US news, they're there to remind us that this isn't just some fringe theory on an obscure message board. This is the central, dominating conversation in the country right now.
It's the unavoidable topic. When a former president accuses his predecessor of treason, it acts like a political black hole. It just sucks all the oxygen out of the room. It becomes the news.
It displaces everything else.
Everything. You could have a major scientific breakthrough today, a natural disaster, a foreign policy crisis, but this is the headline that dominates. It forces everyone, the media, political opponents, the public, to respond on its terms, to debate within the frame that's been set.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. We've looked at the specific words, treason, coup, overthrow. We've looked at the redefinition of a coup to mean something bureaucratic using intelligence. We've looked at the call for arrest and the breaking point reaction. What are we actually seeing here?
I think if we take a step back, what we are truly seeing is a struggle over reality itself. The source material isn't just describing a political disagreement, it's describing a conflict where the shared definitions of our most important political words are completely breaking down.
What do you mean by that?
Well, just take the word coup. To one half of the country, as you said, a coup involves tanks and generals. It's a physical, visible event. To the other half, a coup can now mean political pressure and investigations.
Two totally different things.
Completely. Or take treason. To one side, it means actively levying war or giving aid to a foreign enemy. To the other, it can now apparently mean using the tools of government to undermine a political agenda you disagree with. When we can no longer agree on what these fundamental words mean, we can't have a debate.
All we can have is what the source describes, a tirade on one side and a reaction on the other.
Precisely. And that's where the dangerous escalation comes from, because if you can't persuade the other side with words, because your words mean different things, you start to reach for more extreme tools, more powerful weapons.
Like calling for arrests.
Exactly. The language of treason and arrest is a tool of escalation. It deliberately changes the boundaries of what is acceptable in political discourse. And once those words are out there, once they're normalized in headlines and news chyrons, you can't really take them back. The Overton window, the range of acceptable debate has been permanently shifted.
We've ratcheted the tension up another notch.
And it is very, very difficult to ratchet that tension back down without something breaking.
It really does feel like we're standing on a precipice. The source uses that hashtag breaking point 360. And after walking through all this, it's really hard to argue with that assessment.
It is. We are looking at a moment where the past, the grievances of 2016, is gripping the future, the politics of 2026, so tightly that it might just choke it before it has a chance to be about anything else.
That is a very sobering thought. We've gone from a single morning statement to the rhetoric of a potential constitutional crisis in the span of this one conversation.
It just shows you the explosive power of language and the enduring power of grievance in politics.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with something to think about. We've talked at length about this time loop, this strange connection between 2016 and 2026. We've talked about how the past is being used to fuel the political battles of the future.
So here's the question that I'm left with, and that we want to leave with you. If the events of 2016 are still so powerful that they are defining the entire political landscape of 2026, if we are still fighting the very same battles, using the same names, and leveling the same accusations a full decade later, at what point does the past actually become history?
And when does it stop dictating the future?
That's the question. Are we moving forward at all, or are we just running in circles faster and faster?
As always, we really encourage you to go and check the sources for yourself. Read the words, look at the hashtags, see how the arguments are framed, and decide what you think.
Because critical thinking is really the only defense we have against this kind of escalation.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.